July has been a very busy month for the OKC Thunder as they have spent it extending three major pieces of their championship core, starting with Shea getting an extension as well, Chet, and then today extending Jalen Williams. Fans around the NBA are wondering whether or not they'll be able to keep up their reign of terror on the NBA when salary implications really start to hit this team a couple of years from now, when these extensions and all that stuff are in full effect. And today, we're going to kind of talk about that, elaborate on it, and why I'm not so worried about the Thunder. And on top of that, there was a stream today where Giannis was on with iShow Speed, and he was talking about Milwaukee just a little bit, couple sound bites, couple things that we're going to talk about. Not going to spend a ton of time on it, but if you're excited or interested in a Giannis trade, I mean, he could have said something that really got you excited, but he could also say something that turned down interest on the trade, right? But Brian Windhorst, I think, had an interesting take on what Giannis said. We're going to get to that later. But firstly, earlier this month, Shea extended, I don't think we reported it, 4-year maximum extension, $285 million supermax, through 2030-31 with Shea. Most expensive or richest annual salary for a player in league history. I believe Devin Booker's extension has usurped that, but that's normal. I mean, it depends on when they extend, pretty much. So it is what it is. So for a while, it was the most expensive / richest one. Chet extended maximum rookie extension for 5 years, $250 million. Bill Duffy of WME Basketball told ESPN. And then earlier today, we got a 5-year guaranteed maximum rookie contract extension that could reach as much as $287 million for Jalen Williams, again, repped by Bill Duffy. So fans around the NBA have been kind of quietly, not so quietly, but have been watching the Thunder and saying, okay, well, this team is super good, but with the apron and all that stuff kicking in, how long can they really keep this going? And earlier today, Brett Siegel, I believe, put out a post on Clutch Points where he talked about the way that they've really planned this out. And it's a great read. Make sure you do check it out. But to kind of give you the quick hitters on it, he talked about how they've been planning around this. They've got their plan is malleable. It can be adjusted as needed. They've got really flexible team controlled salaries on their books. They front loaded some of their guys. But ultimately, the main thing about the Thunder is that there's going to be a sliding scale of guys. Like there's going to be a carousel of guys that they put around their main three as needed. But firstly, they're still able to remain extremely competitive in the now. Like, what's to say they don't just run it back and win again, right? What's to say they don't win a couple in the next couple of years? Like, who knows, right? And so for the immediate future, they're still extremely competitive, able to still keep mostly everybody in tow that they have on the roster. And then a few years from now, they'll start shuffling some pieces. They're already drafting guys that could be there to shuffle in pieces. Is Isaiah Hartenstein on this team a few years from now? Who knows, right? He's got a very tradable salary. Maybe they do something with that. But ultimately, with the surplus of picks that they have, they can keep on cycling in new guys and also all the while giving them time to develop and grow into meaningful players in the rotation. And that doesn't mean they have to go out there and be a heavy, high usage guy. This team doesn't need that. If they can find more guys like, Wiggins or Joe that can kind of just plug into this team and play a great role, or guys like a Dort, right? That's more or less what they're going to be looking for in the draft and all that stuff. And maybe with all those surplus of picks, they could come to a position where they trade for a younger guy that could be a part of this team, or make a trade for a guy like a Caruso a few years from now. That's a veteran that could put this team over the top again if they happen to struggle at any point. So the main thing with this team is that while they've got a lot of money invested in these three, they're very flexible, right? They're very, very flexible. So we do have a look at their team salaries here, and look at all the red. All the red is team options. That's awesome, man. That's really awesome. And the green, if you're wondering what that is, I think that's just qualifying. Yeah, greens are qualifying. There's literally no player options or any of that on their books here. So they've got the ability to cut bait with several guys. Like, for example, Lou is technically eligible for an extension. Can they maybe talk him down from 18 million? Right? That's something that they're going to have to approach with him. Maybe he's not eligible right now, but he will be this time next year, of course, looking for a new contract. Same goes for Hartenstein. Can they talk him down from nearly 30 million? Another thing with this is that this salary cap keeps going up too. So how much of the percentage of the cap are these auxiliary guys actually taking up on the books, that matters too, despite what the actual number says. How much cap space percentage are these guys actually going to be taking up? That obviously is a big piece. Caruso, 22 million in 28-29. Not sure I'll love that. But we'll see what happens if we get to that point, right? They have options around that. Caruso's like the one guy. That's a good number right now. I'm just worried about a few years from now as he declines a bit, gets older, all that stuff. But I love him on the deal he's on right now. Obvious bargain, good team contract right now. Joe, couple years here, actually front loaded Joe's contract a little bit there, 12 million, 11 million, and then 11 million team option a couple years from now. Wiggins front loaded his deal as well. He's going to be making 8 million in 27-28. That's going to be literally nothing. And then they've got an 8 million option for the following season if they wanted to keep him there as well. Jalen is not showing, actually neither Jalen Williams is showing their extensions, I believe. So they both got extended, but they're not showing their extensions on this. This is a little bit out of date. But can a guy like Ousmane Dieng play a big role for you a couple years from now? Obviously, they're going to try to leverage that. Sorber as well, Topic. Kason Wallace will be due for an extension a couple of years from now. But ultimately, though, like depending on the size of the role that these guys have, they may just cut bait with some of these guys. So really, when I look at this, I see, again, as Brett Siegel pointed out, a lot of team-friendly deals in terms of literal salary, but then a lot of team control in regards to literal team options. Like they don't have to even, again, Kenrich Williams, 7 million here. I assume that he didn't get extended. I don't believe I saw that. Like they've got just so much here. So you could be looking at a situation where a few years from now, you could have mostly a clean book outside of your main guys, which is great. That's just insane flexibility. They haven't really got themselves tied into too much. And again, their main guys will be taking up a lot of their cap space. But if they're able to get other young guys in there that are on cheaper deals or other guys that are on team-friendly deals, etc., maybe pull off some trades. And then ultimately, because right now they're not even like a tax team. Ultimately, they will become a tax team. But if they're still hoisting a team, especially if they turn into like a dynasty, I don't know. That's like forecasting far out. I don't know. But say hypothetically speaking, if they turn into like a dynasty and win like 3-4 chips, in a handful of years, ownership better be willing to pay the top expensive team in the salary, expensive team in the NBA, salary wise. Like you get to that point. So that's another situation where it's like, I'm not worried about the Thunder being able to keep their team together. But I will say that requires a lot of work, a lot of legwork in terms of like finding the right guys to plug into this situation when you ultimately do start rotating in and out guys, because that's inevitable. Like you're going to keep your main guys locked up, but the rotation of guys is going to shuffle, and that's inevitable, right? That's just going to have to happen. You can keep some of these guys on team-friendly deals, like again, like a Dort or something like that. But some of these guys are just not going to be here. It is what it is, especially a guy like, again, Caruso, Hartenstein. I don't know what's going to happen with those guys in particular, but can you find the right guys? But the good news is they've got their guy, in the front office who's been able to position them well for championship contending teams over the last decade or so. And he does a great job with stockpiling assets and forecasting out. So if there's anybody I think can get it done, I feel pretty comfortable personally with Sam Presti. All right, so on the Giannis bit, he was on with iShowSpeed earlier, like I said. Probably we'll see. I love Milwaukee. So iShowSpeed asked him, like, are you going to basically stay in Milwaukee? Extremely direct, too. Like, no beating around the bush. He just said, so are you staying in Milwaukee? And Giannis said, yeah, probably. We'll see. I do love Milwaukee, right? And that was the answer that he gave. Quite literally, that was how it went. And I thought this was interesting because Brian Windhorst went on ESPN today, and this is not to disparage him in any way, and said, well, the probably will see is why 29 other teams are looking forward to Giannis asking out, whether that's like as a free agent a couple years from now or as a trade instead of that. Like they're looking for it because Giannis is not 100% sold. And even if Giannis is like 95%, right? That sliver of a chance matters to other teams for a player of the caliber of Giannis, which is interesting, right? I wouldn't want to be a team that's hinging everything I have on a hypothetical free agency, a class from a couple years from now. You know who I'm talking about. I wouldn't want to be a team that's doing that personally, because who knows? You can't forecast that. Like, these guys could extend, these guys could ask for different situations and get traded elsewhere and enjoy where they're at, then extend. Like, who knows, right? So ultimately, though, Giannis is somebody that obviously most teams will be trying to go after. Maybe not all 29, even though I think all 29 should, but a good number of the teams, if they're in a position, should try to get in the Giannis market. And later on as well, after Giannis left, he gets on a call with IShowSpeed. And this is, again, another quick 10-second clip, so I'm not even going to bother playing it. And he says, "Oh, you need to come to one of my games." And iShow's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll definitely be in Milwaukee." He's like, "Yes, come to Milwaukee, come to one of our games." And so, again, further quote unquote confirmation that he's not really looking to leave. He loves Milwaukee. And it's, for him, it's deeper than basketball, right? It's more about, for one, loyalty, sure, but also just the way they treated him and his family and all that stuff. You can go back and research all that. I think that for him, that stuff really matters, right? He has also said if he doesn't win more championships, he will feel like he's not fully fulfilled. And that's fair. That is 100% a fair stance to take if you're Giannis. And I think he's doing the right thing by keeping pressure on the organization to try to continue to make moves. They went out and made a huge gambit by extending and waiving, or stretching and waiving the deal for Dame, and then creating cap space out of thin air by doing so to bring in Miles Turner after losing Brook. And you could argue they still need to make more moves. They've mostly retained their other guys. And that's good. The guys that they've retained fit perfectly around Giannis. Do they get in on a Bradley Beal? There's some reporting about them potentially getting in on a Russ Westbrook, things like that. Do they have the ability to try to get Giannis a co-star, right? And even though the fact that the East is wide open right now, will they be able to pull something like that off and then put them in a position to potentially win this year? But when we first started talking about this, Trevor and I, when this stuff really started to pop up and take off, I asked, and you may remember, I said, well, what's the timeline if you're Giannis, right? Because I understand sitting back in the weeds, waiting to see what they do ultimately and all that stuff. But realistically, this was pre-Turner stuff, right? Pre-Dame wave, Turner sign. Realistically, they don't have a lot of options. Now, they created something there, but the situation is still largely the same. They don't have many moves to make. They don't have assets. They don't have a lot of pivot points. And so if the timeline is this year, right now, then okay. Maybe it's just best for both organizations if they just cut each other loose, right? You get back assets for Giannis, you pivot to a rebuild. Now, again, this is pre-Turner situation. One could argue it's still the same, despite the fact that they are going to have that dead salary on their books. It matters, I think, if you're trying to be a competitive team. It matters less if you're not. But anyway, like, maybe that's just the best situation. But it seems like they're dead set on keeping Giannis, which they should be, right? You don't get a guy like Giannis often. Right? That's the thing. You don't get a guy like him often. You don't get a guy that's a generational guy that wants to be on your team, that loves your city, and is not interested in leaving, really, unless he's forced to do so, quote unquote, forced to do so, right? And so if you have somebody like that, despite the fact you could probably jumpstart because you've put yourself in a corner, jumpstart a rebuild, all that stuff, damn the rebuild, try to be competitive. Now, again, what's the timeline? Because I don't think they're winning it this year. If a couple years from now, he's okay with saying, okay, in a couple years, we will be in a position to win it. And that's all I need, right? As long as you keep your promise to me, you'll be competitive. You'll make these moves around the perimeter. And in a couple of years, we'll be in a good position to win it. That's fine. You'll give me a co-star, whatever, right? We don't know that. We've not been made privy to those talks. But if he's okay with that, then sure, right? That's perfectly fine. Now, that absolutely does hamper the teams that are trying to just wait for him to potentially leave in free agency for some reason. But yeah, I think this is still, like, ultimately, though, I keep coming back to, like, we haven't gotten a request. It's just been, oh, I'm waiting to see what happens, right? Ironically, with that, we were supposed to hear a couple weeks after the draft, which is like now, like quite literally, like now, like this week, like, so we should hear something soon on that front. But within reason, I mean, they created something with the Turner situation, but they didn't have options. Like, and if you're Giannis, you knew that going in, that the Bucks didn't really have options. But again, they found a way to create something, and hopefully they're able to keep Giannis, right? I don't want to see him leave a small market team and have them have to rebuild, even if that, like I said, could be what's best. But ultimately, though, they should keep Giannis and figure out what's going on. Hopefully they're a competitive team. I like the roster moves they've made, and it seems like Giannis may like them as well. I mean, there was reporting that he recruited Turner and was in on that and all that stuff. So we'll see what happens. But ultimately, though, let me know what you guys think about all the stuff we talked about in today's video. If this is your first time here, make sure you stick around, subscribe. And if you watch the entirety of the video, thank you. We really appreciate you so much. I genuinely mean it. And we'll see you all in the next one.